Welcome back. This is going to be me doing a tier list to an extent. It's not me doing a tier list in terms of every single god in the game and who's best A to Z. This is me looking at individual roles and who I think is best in each role that they actually get played in. Okay. Now, one or two gods might be missing off here that you're used to seeing, or one or two maybe added that you may not have ever done in these roles before. But this is just my personal view of where they stand right now. And I'm not going to put the ledger on the side from DM's site. I'm just going to use what we can see here. You can see this is DM's tier list, so you can go there and use it himself. Shout out to him for putting this forward for the community to be able to use. But what we're going to see in this one is that I'm going to go through each individual role and rate where they should be. Now, the SS plus SS, this doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to be in this order. It doesn't necessarily mean they are perfect for this, but this is how I see these being played out, and this is the sort of order we're going to see them in competitive play to an extent. At least in ranked games as well, you'll see them most likely than not be picked up in this sort of order as well. So we'll start off right from the top and work our way down the list. Athena and Sylvanas, both up there in the S plus tier. These are almost first pick, first ban materials in the support role. Sylvanas, ridiculous wave clear, ridiculously strong in the laning phase. He has a very good mid game. His end game still isn't weak. When he gets Lotus Crown online, he's almost indestructible and makes your team that way too. So Sylvanas just has a good stage of the game all the way through. May fall off a little bit in the late game, but he can still turn that around with a very good pull, or he could end up getting a really good root off or a really good ultimate off. He could cause a lot of issues. Plus, Lotus Crown will keep him going into the later stages of the game. So Sylvanas, one of the top ones. Athena, global map presence, good wave clear, good rotational ability. She's a very good all-rounder in the support lane. Has decent setup for late game gods as well. Those taunts are very important. Her damage isn't too bad either for wave clearing, and she can get herself out of bad situations and never have to be in the lane for the goal. She doesn't have to be on the Gold Fury side of the map. When the Gold Fury is available, she can be over in solo lane if she needs to be and still rotate back. If you're on defense and you're trying to push against fire minions, you could be away from the fight still and then defend the fire minions and then ult to the team fight if there's one that goes on. She has a lot of utility to her. I think it's very strong. Following that up is going to be going to the S tier. That's where we're going to see Geb in the S tier right now. Geb is fantastic because if those two are banned away, Geb is still a top tier support. His early game is still weak, and this is why he's not S plus, because he struggles in the early game more often than not. He can get pushed in by Sylvanas, by Athena, and by the wave clear of the Hunters, that he's not really got much that he brings to the table during the early stages. It takes him a little bit longer to get online than some of the other supports, as he wants to get like level 9 until he's tanky enough to be a frontline. His shockwave doesn't do too much, but it does enough during team fights to cause an issue, obviously. And then his late game ultimates and those shields are still amazing. The cleanse of CC is absolutely huge, as well as those shields to prevent damage, and then the cataclysms as well. Very survivable, very good at rotations as well. He's just going to get through the early game, and that's why he's not in S plus, is because his early game isn't as strong as most. Talking about another support there, S minus, is going to be Ymir. Ymir for me is really strong. He could potentially be in the same tier as Geb. The only issue is that he actually struggles against a little bit against Athena, and he can struggle a little bit against Geb, just because Geb can cleanse him away, and he has to get him a melee range against Athena. But his matchup against Athena is actually not too bad. She's just got better rotational ability. And Sylvanas, he can push just as hard as Sylvanas, but he has to get in melee range to do so. If he gets rooted and gets hit by a pull, it could throw him off his game. Ymir can be very aggressive and a very strong support. So he's still up there. He's got good utility. His walls do something that most of the other gods in the support role don't do, and that's to bring in walls to the fight. These walls that he brings into this fight change the style of the map. They change the flow of the game. They can cut off a complete area from a team rotating away or into it and force them to use escape abilities to try and get through those areas if they want to in a quick period of time. His freeze is pretty much a lot like an Athena taunt. The only difference is they'll stay in place, which means that gods that want to keep people in place, like snipes followed up by krakens, or snipes from Ra, or krakens, or I'm a monsters, perfect setup for those in the late stage of the game, forcing beads every which way but loose. Plus he's got constant slows, and his damage is pretty strong too, so he can duel gods in the early stages as well and put a lot of pressure on. So you may as well put S minus. In the A plus tier, we're going to see Bacchus and Hercules. Bacchus, after his buffs, to the chug, he's actually a lot stronger than people give him credit for. He's got a very good ultimate. His Intoxicate is very, very strong, and does fantastic damage. And it's one of those CCs that people have to kind of blow beads on sometimes when it's not even a hard CC. The Intoxicate does so much damage and causes you to be drunk for 8 seconds. 8 seconds is a long time in Smite. That's 8 seconds where you're not going to be able to guarantee basics. You're not guaranteed to be able to juke abilities because you're not going to be able to walk properly. So it forces you to use a a removal of some kind, maybe beads, maybe just a leap out of the fight until it goes off cooldown or whatnot, and that's underestimated. Plus, his settle potential with belly flop is amazing. His steal potential is probably one of the best in the games. One of the best steal potentials in the game because belly flop is a knock up. He can jump over walls as well to get there with that belly flop. Followed by Intoxicate can make them drunk if required, so you can flop in and then secure that Gold Fury or the Fire Giant. It's very, very effective for that. Take into account near enough every other one of these support gods in this top tier that you can see on the screen. In this top tier of gods, Athena has to use one, which is a dash, to get into range or ult onto a teammate. Sylvanas will be buying Blink to go for those steals. Geb will be buying Blink to go for those steals. Ymir will be buying Blink to go for those steals. Bacchus, he does not require Blink to go in and steal, which means he leaves that second active slot available. Against a lot of healers on the enemy team, like a Sylvanas, weakening curse, boys, it's available for you. Against a heavy burst composition, let's get ourselves Shell for us and our teammates. This opens up that second active slot that you see with most of the top tier supports are going to go into Blink. And if they don't go into Blink, it's going to hurt them and it's going to cause them issues. So Bacchus, very, very strong, very underrated, and obviously has that good CC with his burp too. Cone stun for 1 second, it may not seem like much, but it's also a healing degenerative effect, which is good against Sylvanas, which is good against Hercules. And going on from the Hercules, going to talk about him now. The top tier warrior in the support role right now, you'll see him be played over in Europe more often than not. Now, most of my tier list guide that you'll see here, or my tier list rundown, is generally based on Europe. I don't really look at America as strong as I do Europe. I see more of the European stuff than I do American. Obviously, why? Because I'm a European. Hercules, in this role, you've seen Trix Tank running multiple times in the support role. Very, very strong support. Has very good sustain with the mitigate wounds. If he gets Bluestone Pendant, he's never going to run out of mana even, be able to spam abilities all day. He has multiple CCs and setup potential, Earthbreaker to pull people into your team, Driving Strike to stun targets, and don't forget it hits multiple targets, and then the Boulder to be able to secure kills or even get a lot of burst damage off on a team because of the fact that it knocks them around, it can bounce off walls and hit them multiple times. Take into account that also gives him CC immunity. It can buy him time to avoid those big all-in combos that can cause a lot of issue for him. And then you still have to bring him down anyway. If you don't bring him down, he'll regenerate back up. His laning phase is pretty good. He's got decent wave clear. He can zone people off experience. If Athena comes up for a shield wall, he can Earthbreaker, Driving Striker. He could just Driving Striker away from it. Sylvanas, very immobile god. Ymir, very immobile god in terms of escapability. They're not the fastest gods in the world. He has kill potential on these if they do get hit by an Earthbreaker. So they have to be a little bit more careful in this lane against a Hercules. He scales very well into the late game as well and becomes this immovable tank object that you just can't kill. And with Bluestone Pendant for him in that build, if he goes for that, with the amount of survivability he's going to have in the late game by building full tank, he's going to be very hard to bring down. Plus his passive, don't forget, the lower HP he gets, the more damage he's going to have, and then he's going to be able to deal decent damage too at all stages, even though he's built full tank. Heading down to the A tier now, and from the top 5 that you can see there from me, so the top 6 you can see, Sylvanas, Athena, Geb, Ymir, Bacchus, Hercules. These are the ones that you're going to see more often than not in the role. And then when we get to the A tier, these gods are not unplayable in the support role, and they all bring different things to the team fight in terms of what they can do in the A tier. These are playable gods in the A tier, and I wouldn't mind seeing these in my games. Anything up to A, I'd be quite happy to have in the support role in any of my games, and most players would as well. They just bring a different flavour to the table, but they cause a few issues for themselves in certain ways, or they're not as strong for typical reasons of the top ones being stronger. Ares is very strong against some of these top tier gods. He's good against Hercules, he's good against Athena, he's good against Geb, he's really good against Geb, and he's good against Bacchus. So his matchups there for Ares are actually pretty strong in the laning phase. His wave clear is what hurts him. He's very aggressive though, and he can do a lot against compositions where they get a circuit, for example. Any mobile gods that have a lot of leaps that wanting to get themselves out of trouble, he can go very aggressive here. And this is why he's pickable, because of the amount of people that want to use their escapes to get away. He's not going to be able to deal with. He's going to be able to deal with them very effectively with the chains and go aggressive. He doesn't have the greatest matchups though. Ymir very good against him, so that's why. And obviously Sylvanas with that push power, it makes it very difficult for Ares to really go aggressive in the lane when he's constantly sat under his tower during the laning phase. But in the mid late game, he can be very strong. Set up a lot, force beads on a lot of gods, force gods into beads as well. All gods like Tyr have to really use Lawbringer to get away from his no escape, and Tyr gets shut down by him. Tyr's very much in the meta right now. So Ket very much in the meta, shuts her down. Awilix gets shut down by him as well. In laning phase, Rama has issues with him, Anher has issues with him. A lot of the hunters do have issues with an Ares too, so Ares is in the mix and he's a good pick. Kumbhakarna! Next up, Kumbha is very strong. He's not as strong as the other gods though. He's got good wave clear. His Yawn is back to where it originally was, and his ultimate, now being sped up, is the best skill to confirm damage in the game. This is the best setup skill in the game, is his epic uppercut on Kumbhakarna. The uppercut confirms any skill that you want to hit next. If you want a raw snipe, that's guaranteed. If you want a kraken, that's guaranteed. Every single thing that Kumbhakarna does with that epic uppercut confirms damage. But the issue with it is that his team have to rely on him confirming that. His laning phase is okay, but he has to get in close. And when he gets in close, this is what can happen with him. He'll use throwback to wave clear, but it's also his escape for the most part, which means that Sylvanas can root him in place and cause an issue for him there. Athena can taunt him straight after he's used throwback, and that's where he starts to struggle in the laning phase. He's got to be careful about when he chooses to use his wave clear, and he wants to be maxing that kind of first as well for damage potential, then Yawn second. His CC isn't that bad. His Yawn is good, his Groggy Strike is good. People seem to underestimate how good his Groggy Strike is. Overall though, combat is playable. In certain situations, I would pick him against some of these other gods. For example, against a Ymir, he's not bad. Against a Geb, he's fine. Against a Bacchus, he's not bad because he can stop the burp being channeled, which means they lose wave clear there as well. And against the likes of Hercules, he's okay as well because he can just disengage with those yawns. Against Guan Yu, very, very strong. Against Ares, pretty strong too, because he can obviously just use his yawn to cancel out Tallow Assault and cancel out Ares' Searing Flesh. Guan Yu, next up on the list. Guan Yu is very, very strong and underrated in the support role as well right now. We saw him played at the weekend just recently by Rafa. I've been playing around with it myself in the support role right now. Tallow Assault is fantastic wave clear. He has a heal, which is one of the only other things. If you look at the actual support role right now, the only gods in there, Sylvanas is the only god out of the top 5 that really have a heal for the team. But so does Guan Yu. Guan Yu's conviction is very strong and gives a heal to the team, but also heals minions. Guan Yu's laning phase against the Sylvanas is very, very strong. He's actually someone that can really tear down a Sylvanas. Tallow Assault shreds protections, which is Guan's 3. Shreds protections. Sylvanas gives protections. Sylvanas heals himself and his teammate. Guan Yu heals himself, his teammate, and all the minions in the area. Guan Yu's heal gets stronger thanks to his passive when he takes damage. Sylvanas' wisps deal dot damage, which stack his passive. He's then also got the slow available to him as well, to be able to slow them down, and then one of the best ultimates in game, in my opinion. Very good for confirming and stealing away Fire Giants and Gold Furies. Good overall damage, mobility to escape, full immunity, slows during that as well, and then to follow it up, it's a stun which can set up damage potential for your teammates with Raw Snipes, with Krakens, with Agony Bombs, all the rest of it. Guan Yu is very, very underrated. He's very tanky as well, innately, and can put up a good fight and stay in a fight very, very long, especially with Bluestone Pendant as well, keeps him in the fight for a lot longer. So Guan Yu, definitely a viable support. Bellona brings a lot to the table. Slows, decent damage, and this is based just on base stats. Slows, decent damage, and then she's got a disarm. Disarm in lane against a hunter stops push power. Disarm in lane against a Sylvanas stops push power because they can't attack for a few seconds. Allows you to get a little bit on. Has some natural sustain with that one. Also with the Eagle's Rally, it gives protections to a team. Also a stun, and also increases her damage. She's got good mobility. She's good in the support role, but right now I wouldn't really be playing her in the support role. There's better places to put her, but if she's still on the table, you could potentially pick her. That's what you need to look at with the Bellona here. Her Fire Giant and Gold Fury Steel, pretty good. She's got a leaping jump into the pit that's on a very low cooldown, and so it is viable to be able to pick her in the support role. Would you pick her right now in the support role? Probably not. You'll understand what I mean when I go to the other roles as well. Odin damage got increased once again. His wave clear is insane. He's very good against Sylvanas. Sylvanas is there, auto-attacking the wave down. One of the best pushes in the game is Sylvanas. That's why he's S tier. But what can Odin do? 1, 2, waves gone. What are you going to do now, Sylvanas? You're going to back your ass up to your tower and feel like every goddamn support that has to play against you Eat that crap. That's what Odin does, okay? On top of that, is that he'll ring in gods, and he's pickable against gods that don't have escapes. Any gods like mid laner, the only mid laner that has a natural escape is Scylla, that can get out of the Ring of Spears. Every other god in that mid lane has to pick Blink to deal with it. Agony, trapped inside a ring. Poseidon, trapped inside a ring, but you don't really want to be there because he's probably going to crack in you. But that's my point that I'm trying to make to you. Goobis, trapped inside a ring. Ra, trapped inside a ring. No healing as well. Remember, no healing as well. He has a lot of damage potential. He can cause a lot of issues. We've seen him played multiple times in the Challenger Cup where he can be useful. He's been seen him in the jungle as well by Weakham. He's not all that bad. He doesn't fall off as early as he used to, and that was one of his issues. He stays a little bit stronger now. His burst potential is pretty good. And the Ring of Spears is one of those abilities that force the enemy gods into getting Blink. Let's just look at how the game could play out, okay? We're just going to look at it just so you can see what I mean. If we were against Athena, Athena doesn't normally take Blink. Athena does not normally take Blink. And so when Odin Ring of Spears around the goal for you, how is Athena going to get into that pit? Well, the way she's going to get into that pit is that a teammate has to go in for her, and she has to ult that teammate to go in to secure the goal for you with the Fire Giant. That's what you're looking to do. Or she has to invest in Blink, which is an odd pick. Other gods that are going to have issues, Gav's going to be blinking in as usual, Ymir will be blinking in, Sylvan's going to be blinking in, Ares going to have to go with Blink to get there. Guan Yu, how's Guan Yu going to get in there if he goes for it? He's not going to be able to. Kumbhakana, probably going to have to go for Blink. Hercules, Blink. There's the only ways that you could get into that if they go for those sort of gods. To get into that Ring of Spears, which is very good. Sets up a lot of damage too, keeps people pinned in, also gives you damage if you get kills in there. Sobek is the final one in the A tier, and Sobek here, you can see he's actually pretty good in lane. His matchups for the most part aren't too bad. He's pretty good in sustain, he's very aggressive for the most part. And the only issue I really feel with Sobek is that Charge Prey is just that ability that sets up a lot of damage potential for your team. But if you miss it, you can put yourself in a world of trouble, and you're going to have to like waddle your backside back and probably have to use Lurk in the Waters if you're against a good team. You have to set up and be very, very safe with the Sobek. Sustain's not too bad. Mana's not too much of an issue anymore, but he is viable. He is viable in some of these matchups. He can be pretty strong and cause a lot of issues for the enemy team. Against a Hercules, it's actually an interesting one, but I'm pretty sure Hercules kind of comes out on top. But they can flip each other backwards and forwards. Against Sylvanas, you can put him in a bad spot, which is pretty effective, plus reduces healing when he wisps himself. So he's not too bad against Sylvanas in that aspect of it. And then we're going to go down to Hades as well. Hades, he's not someone that you're mainly picking support, but the reason that he's down here and the reason he's actually on this list, even though because he's classed as a Guardian, first of all. Second of all, his wave clear is very strong. He has sustain. He has one of the shortest cooldown CCs in the game with his fear. There's also a silence. He's innately tanky, and his ultimate can force beads and force people to burn escapes to get away from. He's not necessarily someone you want in the support role overall. When you think about the fact that Golfew in Fire Giant steals, he has potential with that because he can dive under the ground to get there with his one, so he doesn't have to build anything crazy like Blink or something like that. Also could go Shield of the Underworld to reflect damage back. Could be an effective thing for him. He's not something you're going to see very often, but he is pickable. He is pickable. Then we go down to the B tier. Now these are kind of fun gods, is what I'd call it. I call them fun gods, but they do have some play. The B pluses, for example, have seen competitive play and will continue to do so just because they bring a different sort of support to the table. These ones down here are generally either hyper-aggressive supports, where you're looking for a kill lane, or they're more defensive supports that you're looking to survive on. Thor with the wall and the hammer can cause a lot of issues. His wave clear is not too bad. The wall can cause problems, and he's also got that global ultimate that can cause problems as well. So that's not too bad for him. Nemesis has constant slows, is a tank destroyer. Think about the fact of Ymir, think about the fact of Sylvanas, and the fact of Geb. They're all pretty much slow, and Nemesis can cause a lot of problems for them because you can just slow them down constantly, use Divine Judgment on them to get herself even tankier, and she's got chase potential and kill potential in that lane with her. Going down to the B tier overall. Fenrir's down there. I think Fenrir might be, I should have probably boosted Fenrir up to B+, honestly. I think Fenrir's about the same boat as Thor and Nemesis, if not a little bit higher, honestly, because Fenrir does have pretty good aggression in this lane. Sun Wukong, pretty weak, honestly, at the moment. I don't know what they need to do to fix Sun Wukong here. I was thinking maybe a 1 second disarm on his Master's Will could make him interesting, and maybe give him a little bit more utility and make him strong, but then he might be too strong in other roles than just in the support. But there's just better supports. Osiris, he's been done before. I wouldn't necessarily advise it right now, but he's got constant slows in this lane. He has to get in close to deal a lot of damage, and it's going to cause a lot of be able to put lots of slows on. His Tether is still very, very strong. Nija, very aggressive support. He can deal a lot of damage with the ring toss for wave clear. He can sash in to cause damage and stun targets out. Then he's got the ultimate for setup potential for his teammates. Not one of the best supports in the game, but can cause a lot of issues for them. Zheng Kui, one that's overlooked for the most part, but if you think about it, he's got a slow, he's got natural sustain, he's got a stun, and he's got natural protections thanks to his demon bag. His ultimate will make people run away from him, even if he's not building full damage, because you'll still go tanky on him. They will run away from him. They will also try and kill him to make sure those demons are not going off onto their targets. He's not the worst god in the world, in fairness, in the support role. He's not someone I would pick, though, but because he'll have bad matchups against a lot of them in terms of getting close. But his wave clear is pretty strong. His wave clear is pretty strong, especially with your max card. You could clear the wave pretty effectively, and that slow is very effective too. Aphrodite, very supportive god. She could be played in the support, but the push lane is going to be rough. The early game is going to be rough for her. She will get heals online. It's not someone I would advise to necessarily pick. And then we get to Cabrakan. Cabrakan is just blah. Cabrakan, he's melee. He has to get in close to deal his damage. It's hard to confirm his damage. And when you're running into these targets, you're going to get beaten up by any one of these. You run at a Hercules, he's going to drive and strike you away. You run at a Bacchus, he can belly flop away or onto you. You go at Athena, she can taunt you or she can dash away. Sylvanas, he can potentially root you. I know your CC immunity you won, but Sylvanas can just heal up the damage you're going to put out and turn it around on you. Geb can just shockwave you to knock you up. Ymir can just freeze you. Ares can just cripple and burn you as you're running into him. Kumba can make you fall down asleep. Guan Yu will just fight you in the face. Bellona will laugh at you and disarm you and watch you flail around like a wacky wailing inflatable tube man. Odin can leap away or put a cage around himself or whatever the hell he wants to do. Sobek will flip you and cause you an issue. Hades will laugh at you and fear you. Nemesis will slow you. Thor will war you. Fenrir will kill you. Sun Wukong is even better than you because he'll just go in his cloud. Osiris will slow you and then jump into the sky or tether you so you're dealing no damage anyway. Nija will laugh at you and throw a ring in your face. There's no reason to ever pick a Bracken. You can see where I'm going. There's no reason to ever pick Cabrakan. He's just not in the right place right now. And that's the end of support. I'll be back in a moment with the next one of Solo.